Hey, you're finally awake. We are nearly there. It was a hell of a time getting the equipment down here, I tell you. They have made a start on the entrance area for now, but it's just a dusty car park. You will see what I mean. Whoa, hold on, it's still quite bumpy. Either way, construction has begun and the animals are en route, and we don't really have much time to get this all turned around. Luckily, we have the backing of some very rich men, eh? I hear we have a herd of visitors from around the world clamoring to get a hold of opening day tickets. Let's make this one pretty amazing. We will. I guess this is the first time you're seeing it in person. It's quite the find. Even more so considering its location. I'm kind of shocked that no one else got here first. Just our luck, eh? Now, the rest of it is going to require a bit of imagination. However, let me be the first to introduce you to the wonderful, beautiful, brand new home of Osania Zoo. Go on, park up. Go grab a look over the edge. Hey, don't get too close, eh? We don't need you falling over already. Welcome to the first episode in a brand new zoo series. I am doing Sandbox. It is going to be a wild ride, and we are creating something very festive for the time of year. We're heading into winter, so why not start in the desert? Today's episode, we're going to be focusing on the brand new Zookeeper DLC that has just come out, and we're going to create our very first habitat for the Hamadryas Baboons. And that should give you a little bit of an idea of the style that we're going to be going for in Osania Zoo. Now, as you can see in the background, I'm just going to lay out some basic paths. While I do that, let me run you through how this zoo is going to work. So, as you can see, we're in Sandbox. We are backed by some very rich men. We're in a very warm area of the world, and we are going to build a luxury resort-style zoo. Now, this is going to take us a couple of weeks. It's not going to be a whole year-long zoo. We're only going to have probably about 15 to 20 animals overall once we are finished. But it is going to feature some crazy architecture, and it's going to give you the opportunity to try some things that just don't really fit into Wildlands. We are going to be running this parallel with our future Planet Coaster series. Keep an eye on the channel for announcements for that. However, this is just a great way of adding a little bit more time into the building and a little bit less time into the franchise than what our other zoos offer us. It will showcase, at least for the first couple of episodes, quite a few animals from the brand new animal pack, and if you have yet to pick that one up, then feel free to check out the video description where I'll pop down an instant gaming link where you can save some money off the cost of this wonderful Zookeeper pack. And I'm going to ruin the entire video for you right now. The Zookeeper pack is well worth it. It has some wonderful animations, some wonderful little bits, and even if it is likely to be our last pack, it's certainly not a major disappointment. I'm a big fan. I'm a very big fan. Now, jumping back to the habitat, we are starting off with a dry moat. We're going to make a nice eye-level habitat here where the guest can see the baboons right up close, but not have the worry of them jumping out and attacking them. We're going to finish off our dry moat with this wonderful little border, which we're going to make out of concrete and soil. Again, a lot of this zoo is going to be about bringing the guests and the animals together in hidden barriers, the sort of barriers you get when you have a lot of money and can afford to make these wonderfully massive habitat. We're going to run this barrier all the way around. We've got this wonderful sort of curved front so that it expands and makes the area feel much bigger than it actually is. A lot of our habitats, certainly on the outside of our zoo, you may have noticed from the entry cinematic, are going to follow the cliff face. So this is essentially an oasis that is sunken into the ground in the middle of probably somewhere in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, that sort of area. Certainly not Africa. It's a bit too deserty for Africa. It's a sunken oasis with this wonderful pool of water, and we're going to take advantage and exploit that and turn it into something a lot more man-made and a lot more made for humans to visit on holiday than for the animals to enjoy. Is that morally correct? Probably not, but it will give us some stunning architecture by the end of it. And that's really what I want to focus on with this zoo. Now, once our dry moat is complete, we're going to start with our rock work, and there's going to be quite a bit of rock work here. The overall idea of this habitat is we're going to keep it very representative of the baboon's normal habitat, which would be the sort of plains and savanna area of Africa. A lot of the inspiration that I took was from a few BBC documentaries, both Planet Earth as always, and also the Life series that came out quite a few years back, where they did an entire special on the Hamadryas, which gave me a load of inspiration. The general result from that was that they're mostly seen among these sort of rocky outcroppings where the vegetation is a little bit denser. The floor is not generally very open, gives them a lot of areas to get away from predators, gives them a lot of areas to climb. That's another thing we're going to sort of go towards with regards to this habitat, is we're not going to bring in any man-made climbing. So we're going to rely on the trees to satisfy the climbing requirement for the Hamadryas. Luckily, they don't need that much because they don't climb that much, mostly just there for them to get away from predators and also keep a nice lookout across their area. We are doing a mixture of the desert and the faux rocks for this, and that's because, again, in a lot of the inspiration, there was quite these very dark rocks, which we don't really have in game outside of the volcanic ones. The volcanic ones are a little bit too black for my liking, so instead we've gone for these dark browny grey faux rocks mixed in with the desert ones. And we're going to use that to build up 2 raised platform areas that the baboons can use to stay on eye level, or in fact just a little bit above the guests, and this will just help them out, make them not feel overlooked too harshly. Once that is done, we're going to start carving out a little dry bed stream. Now the idea is, again, because we are in the middle of the desert, you wouldn't really see large bodies of water. But as you'll find out shortly, we are going to work on our oasis to keep that from evaporating. Equally, because we are funded by very rich men, we are going to be able to really go crazy when it comes to bringing in things like a water source and just filling this up, even though it's going to be constantly evaporating away. These type of attractions, we won't call them zoos, these type of attractions generally are not most ecologically minded and will quite happily throw hundreds and thousands of gallons of water away a year in these sort of situations. And we're going to be no different. We're going to build ourselves a nice little stream. The baboons can then have a drink, have a swim. And it turns out that they've actually got some pretty good swimming animations, and they spend quite a bit of time in the water, which is a bit of a surprise. Once you've got our stream bed laid out, we're going to jump onto texturing. Now, texturing in this new map is a little bit more interesting actually than the temperate map. The soils and the sands all mix together quite well. All we're going to do is just use the grass as a highlight, and the rest is going to be all about blending soil and sand to get the result we want. We're going to do this across the entire habitat. I'm not going to make you watch me do the whole thing because it does take quite a while. Once that is complete, just the dry moat wall on the outer edge, we're going to build up with rocks. Again, I don't mind the baboons climbing down here. They're more than welcome to. We've made them a little ramp to get out. But the idea is that this will just give them another cliff face to clamber all over. To add a little bit of detail to the overall habitat, we're also going to use some of the smaller faux rocks, and we're going to do a couple of different colours of them, and then we're literally just going to go crazy. What I actually did was I zoomed all the way out and just plastered these everywhere. And this is just to add a little bit of ground texture. A lot of this, and across the entire zoo, is probably going to use this method, where we're not going to rely too much on plants, or at least variations of plants. We're going to rely more on rocks and sort of negative space, so area where there is nothing to really drag your eye around the habitat. And as you'll see at the end here, it does work out really well. It looks a little bit weird now without all the other bits around it, but it does work out really well. Now, I mentioned earlier we were going to bring in a bit of concrete, and we're also going to bring in a way of protecting our oasis and stop it from evaporating away. And this is where I got the original concept of the zoo from, which was a design from a British architect who designed a sunken oasis for Abu Dhabi. And essentially this works by taking these giant concrete pillars and suspending a flat surface on the top to deflect away the sun, but also trap in the moisture below them. And it's designed to resemble cracked earth. So the hope is once the zoo is complete, because we'll be adding more and more as we go through the episodes, you'll be able to look down from the aerial view and just see this cracked earth with little hints of green through it. And then when you're underneath the canopy that we've created with these giant concrete pillars, it will feel like a whole different world to the desert scape that is outside. And we'll have these little things poking through, like little windows, little openings, just to let the sunlight through. But it'll also allow us to bring in much more plant life and make it much more lush without necessarily having to worry about how we keep that plant life alive in the harsh desert heat. This is made using the circle method on a mud pillar, just to give ourselves a funnel. And then I found this wonderful plaster dome, which makes a great transition piece. And then we're just going to bring our wonderful giant column of concrete down into the ground. Before we put a lid on this, we're going to line it up with the trees and just make sure that it sits just that little bit higher, so we're not restricted on what plants we can use and how high they can go. And then for the ceiling, for now, we're just going to start by placing down big flat slabs of concrete. And later on, off camera, I'll actually go around and edge these to make them a little bit chunkier. This is just a first draft. This may change as the zoo progresses and is built further. I may look at making these slightly thicker in certain areas. A lot of the reference photos from that architect did show it being of variable thickness. I had to play around, tried to get it to work, and I couldn't really get it to look how I wanted it to look. What we're left with at the end here is very much the closest I could get, and I'm happy with it, but we will likely improve on it as the episodes go through, and then in the very final tour, they may likely look a little bit different to how they do now. Once that surface has been built, we're going to place it down, colour it so it blends in with the surrounding sand, and it looks a little odd when there's just one, and even once I've got a couple more in, it might look still a little bit odd. It looks better, but I think once we've got this going over the majority of this central area of the zoo, it's going to look really good, and I can't wait to see it finished. Now we have our canopies installed, we can go ahead with the planting, and I absolutely adore this bush. These bushes are perfect for what I need them to be. They hug into the rocks, they've got just that bit of green on them, but they're still dry enough. I basically went crazy on the rock work with these. Again, I'm not going to make you sit through the hours of planting that I did in this habitat, but I think it really brought it together. I dare say, at least in recent episodes, this is one of my favourite finished result visually, and it might just be because it's quite a jump from what I've been doing so far, but equally it just fits so well. Everything looks really dry and arid, and the baboons running around look great. I'm so excited about it. Now, it's not just these bushes that we're going to be putting down. We're also going to bring in some of the dring grass, as this works really nicely in this sort of climate. Also, as you can see in the background, we've started to incorporate some of the more wonderful Africa and Middle Eastern trees, the incense tree and the Maccabi tree. They are brilliant. The fact that they are all climbable as well just makes them even better. So these trees are all adding to our climbing requirement. Spoiler for the end, there was absolutely enough climbing. They are really happy with it. Climbing animation and the way they use these trees is really good. Certainly better than we've seen with a lot of the more European trees. And then once we've popped down all our trees, it's just a case of going around the habitat, zooming out, zooming in, seeing where we've got these blank areas, going back and putting a few more grasses. And we've got a good mixture of the oat grass and the bluegrass, and it works really well. You can see also we've got these little patches of green down. Now these are essentially little areas where they're highlighting the top of the raised platforms. So we're going to put some more grass on those. And then the creosote bush, for once, finally is in the right climate. And we're going to use that as well just to dot around the landscape. Not forgetting down in our dry moat, this wouldn't really have too much because a lot of it is going to be covered over and there's not going to be a huge amount of, I guess, vegetation ability to grow down there. However, we are going to pop a couple of bits around just to break up some of those squarer lines where the rocks meet the floor, and also just to fill out with a little bit of colour. Now, whilst we watch a few more of those plants go in, let me take this opportunity just to thank you for watching today. It's always exciting when we start a new zoo. And if you are finding it enjoyable, please consider tippy-tapping the like button down below. If you're liking where this zoo is going and you're not already subscribed, don't forget to tippy-tap that subscribe button. It should have just lit up for you. And let me know in the comments what animals you're excited to see in our zoo, and I will do my best to get a few of those popped in. And we're also probably going to need a couple of names, so keep an eye out on the community wall for a post about that. Now, with the planting majoritively finished, we're going to jump on to building a little backstage. And I originally didn't want to do a backstage. My original thought was Sandbox Zoo will do an implied backstage and just leave it there. Unfortunately, as you've probably guessed by now, if you've been watching some of our other videos, I can't let a backstage go to waste. So we are going to still keep it fairly simple. It's just going to be a couple of areas for bedding, but we are going to build them a backstage. And we're going to do that in a fairly interesting way. So I'm going to build a very boring concrete box. And this is on purpose. It's not not just me having no idea. Essentially, what I want to do is make a couple of architectural buildings and use them for staff buildings and backstage areas. So we don't want the buildings necessarily, apart from a couple, to be really big and flashy. They're just kind of not meant to be seen. Now, I did find a reference image of some architecture done in the desert. Looking into it, it actually worked really, really well. So I thought I'd probably use that as a nice bit of inspiration. So what we've done is we've made a concrete box, as you can see. We're just going to pop together a very simple wire fence to go on the inside. I'm going to put a couple of wooden accents in there just because, again, in most zoos you wouldn't bother. This would get destroyed, but we've got enough money to do it. So why not? Let's make it pretty. So once we've got our gate and fence pieces sorted, we're just going to pop them around, make a couple of sealed off areas. The idea is we just want to make the impression that we could seclude some animals out the way if they needed to, for whatever reason, you know, to look after them or separate fighting males, etc. We're going to do our normal roller doors, and I'm not going to go crazy with the electrics in this, although really you think I would. I think it was just more, as I say, we're not really going to be seeing this backstage pretty much outside of what you see on the screen now because the visitors can't see it. However, once we've got a roof and some windows popped in, and these are very little windows because we don't want to let too much heat in with that, we're then going to build ourselves some sculptural elements that are going to clad the front of the building and hide a lot of the facade, and also at the same time bring a lot of shade onto those windows, letting light through but not necessarily letting all the heat in. Now, this was based on the reference picture, and essentially all it is a couple of, in our case, brick walls that are tilted slightly. They've got a bit of a geometric pattern to them, so they match the squareness of the building, and we're just going to raise them and have them stick out the ground at various points along the building. And as you can see there, it worked actually pretty well. It distracts away from the building. So all we're going to do is turn them all, the outside and the building itself, into the same color as the surrounding sand. Finishing touches now. So we're going to make ourselves a nice living barrier, and we're going to do that by having our little soil runway be filled with some of the plants mirroring what's in the habitat. We can finally get away with using some brighter colors like these ironwood trees just to add a little bit of detail. Again, it's all just about having fun with this planting. With that done, we're also going to need a little bit of a fence to stop people launching themselves in. Now, this isn't to stop the baboons getting out. That comes later. This is just to keep people in, but we don't want it to block off this cinematic and wide zoom view that we have of the habitat. So we're going to keep it relatively low. It's just there as a notice to the people not to climb over it. All we're going to use is a bit of wood cladding and some metal cable. We're going to pop on the end of this metal cable the little LED caps. I did look at using the new metal beams and the new metal poles and wire that comes with the new Zookeeper pack. That unfortunately was still a little bit too thick, but we will be using that, and I am a big fan of what they brought us in this Zookeeper pack. We will certainly be seeing them make an appearance in the next couple of episodes. Once we've got our fence built, we're going to run that all the way around the circumference of our curved wall. That's just going to essentially give us a little bit of a barrier. Once that is complete, we are also going to go back and we're going to make ourselves a little hot wire fence. And this is just going to be angled off the front. And I'm going to run this up and down all the way along the front of the dry moat, but I'm also going to take it around the back above the rocks so that the baboons cannot climb out, and also along the back wall in areas where they could potentially scale. So this is just there to keep the baboons in. Obviously, because we're playing in Sandbox, we don't necessarily have to worry too much about escaping, but we're going to do it for realism anyway. Final finishing touch then, we're just going to add in a little water source. As I say, we've got this running pond dry bed stream, and we kind of need to give it a source. So we're going to do that by just bringing out a guttering pipe, putting a couple of grates over the top and sides of it, and then we're going to submerge in a water jet to show essentially as though it's firing the water into the stream to give it a bit of momentum. If you see this and giggle, then your mind goes to the same place mine does, which is hilarious. And then we're just going to put a little bit of a splash at the end there, just so we've got a bit of movement and a bit of dynamicism on this end. And with that done, let's get the baboons in and let's see them enjoying their new habitat. And here we have it, the wonderful, warm, rolling plains of Africa. I really, really like this. And I say that every time, but this time I am blown away by how good this looks. I'm so happy with it. I really enjoy building it. It's a nice, refreshing jump from doing more temperate habitats and more temperate zoos. And I'm really excited for some of the architectural elements that we're going to bring in with some of the buildings, and certainly the big finale building that I have in mind. The baboons look amazing. I had my doubts. I'm still a bit iffy on the textures and the shading on them, but their animations are brilliant. The fact that they're climbing in all the trees and they're swimming in all the water, I can't fault that. And the look of I've got about 30 baboons in here and them just running all over the place and interacting with each other. I think I found a new love for large habitats with many animals in them, and we may have to do a couple more because I really, really like how this looks. If you've enjoyed the episode today, as mentioned, please give us a little like down below. It really helps the channel out. If you're not subscribed, jump on in this journey with us. I really enjoy where Planet Zoo is going, especially now that we can start jumping on into mods. So that's another series. Keep an eye out for that. So if you're not subscribed, tippy tap that subscribe button. And if you want to be notified when the new videos pop on out, don't forget to turn on your notifications. Pop a comment down below as to what animals you can't wait to see in Osania Zoo, and I will see you next episode. Goodbye.